much, everybody, for being here. It's a delight to see all these happy, smiling faces, only two of which I know are forced to be here. So thank you very much for joining us through the portal. This is a panel on the different ways creative members of our fandom are bringing ponies into the human world. So I'm going to assume by those in attendance that this is something that you're interested in. Fantastic, that's a thumbs up. So we have some jewelers with us here today. We have basically a mixed media. I don't know if I can tie you down. And we also have a cosplayer here. I myself am technically a mixed media because I have too many hobbies and not enough skills. So we're just going to quickly take it one by one. If we can just start with introductions, including your name, your preferred medium, how long you've been working in that medium, how you got started, and how do you recommend others to get started in it. Is that all good? Alrighty, so I'll start over here to my right.
My name is Danielle and I make, jewellery. My preferred medium to work with is polymer clay because it's pretty easy to use. I've been working with it since I was maybe like 12 years old, and I would recommend you get into it by just picking up some clay and making it.
Hi, my name's Angus. I can also be nicknamed Bodge, is my usual nickname, like on my badge. But what I like doing is, my favourite medium to play with is gold, but it can be a little bit expensive. So I usually play with everything else but gold sometimes. But it's quite fun, and get quite messy if you do polyester.
Terrific. And for anybody who's getting started now, do you have any tips?
Yeah, I would suggest doing a lot of research, like a lot of research. Like if you can, just spend a lot of time on the internet before you do it. And don't dismiss any Google links that link you to things. Because sometimes there's a little bit more context in what you use.
Fantastic, thank you. And moving over, Dawn. I know you're no stranger to these panel tables.
Yeah. I'm Rebecca, also known as Dawn of Dawn Designs Art. My preferred medium for anything like sculpture-wise is polymer clay. I use Sculpey, and I've been doing it for a few years now, though I haven't really done too much yet. And for anyone getting into it, I'd say, yeah, just buy a pack, a colour, and just make something and make it and see what happens.
Excellent. And last but certainly not least.
My name's Ash, also known as Sombralicious on the AliCon Discord. Doing cosplay for about a bit over a year now. Third medium with cosplay is EVA foam or stainless steel.
And how would you recommend somebody got into cosplay?
Do you recommend to get into it? Just start with something simple. Have a look at a character you might like, see what you can do to work around that.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, obviously starting out can be a little difficult, and I'm sure we all have entire bins full of scrapped big planned projects when we first started out and then realised the magic of starting small. If you had two pieces of advice for yourself when you were starting out, what do you think they would be?
Probably don't do anything crazy at first. That's too much. And you'll end up with everything, well, as you said, in the bin. And maybe don't make too much of something, because sometimes you might not be able to sell it.
Good point, good point.
Research.
That's going back to your Google links. And how many hours do you think we've all spent on YouTube watching people going, how does this magic work?
Probably too much time.
Too much time. Half a lifetime, I would
Not
presume.
long, actually. I don't watch many videos on
Well, I
the
suppose that's why you're on that
tutorials.
side of the stage. This is for the way too many hours on YouTube, and that's for the just getting in there. I like that. Any
No.
advice for yourself, Sally?
Yeah, advice for myself, start earlier. I should have been doing this years ago, so I'd be better now. And watch the oven like a hawk. Your things will burn if they're in for even a moment too long or even a touch too high heat. And you don't want that, especially if you've spent hours on this one piece and then it suddenly is black and burnt. Or in a worst case scenario, bubbling. So yeah.
What if you were making the smooth? Might get away with it.
I don't think the smooth works as a burnt black with a tiny bit of purple.
Well, I mean, we've all seen Twilight fight off things with big lasers, so let's just call it a fan interpretation. And any advice for starting out in cosplay for yourself back in the day?
With adhesives, try and find out what can work and what won't work. Just experiment on some piece you're not really going to use. Find certain adhesives won't work when you want them to. And another one is wear protective equipment if you're going to work with grinders and that. Last thing you want to be doing is trying to fix yourself after you cut yourself or something.
Fair enough. And so I think it's pretty fair to say that we all sort of get into our respective mediums, we like what we're doing, and then we see the shiny new thing. Is there anything that you're dying to try out, maybe a new medium or a new technique that you're gearing up to do next?
I've been trying out needle felting probably since last year. It's still relatively new to me. I'd like to spend more time and make it better. But otherwise, I just see new things. I live in Japan, so I see some new things all around, things that you don't see in Australia, and I just want to try them out. So I've been trying out all sorts of new things.
Very nice. And sorry, needle felting, I'm not familiar. Is that starting with felt or ending with felt?
Ending up with like a felted sculpture.
Oh, right, nice. Interesting to see.
Yeah, it's like a little plush.
Hey. The Tony's.
Yeah.
And yourself? What's the next big deal?
I want to experiment with casting and molding. Well, I have been molding and casting for probably years now, but I want to do more advanced stuff. I'm seeing if I can possibly do one using making scepters like this, but out of solid brass, with much higher detail and accuracy. But it's going to be very difficult to do. The other one I'm also wanting to do is maybe experiment with making more things out of gold, but that's very expensive to do too. So
Well, that's what we're working our way up to, the gold budget.
yeah, possibly even gold plate the brass thing too. So it's
Okay.
so it's gangster.
So for things I want to do, I want to do some more wire sculptures because my first big sculpture I made was like a tree out of wire, and then I did a vinyl scratch out of wire, and then I couldn't find a good wire to use, so I haven't really done any more of that since leaving uni. I also want to learn needle felting. I've seen some amazing needle felting, and I want to learn to do it. And I want to learn to do plushies. I want to learn everything. I want to do it all.
Can't relate. And yourself?
New medium I'd like to try is Warbler. Different to EVA foam. It's thermoplastic. It forms a bit like clay. You can sculpt armor and stuff out of it. But the only problem is it's a bit more expensive than foam, and it can also warp and melt if it gets hot enough. So probably not real good for summer, and a lot heavier too.
Alright, good stuff. Now I'm going a little off script here, but you did bring this up. So obviously we've covered that it's not brass and gold. So what is Twilight Cane made out of here?
This particular Twilight cane is made of polyester on the inside, reinforced with fiberglass. and has a steel rod through the middle of it and a brass connector on the inside to prevent damaging and misthreading. But then there's an acrylic coat over it, which is what gives it this really gold coat. And the crystal itself is made of a hardened acrylic resin.
For those of you playing the home game, I did not expect it to be so heavy when I did that little introduction, so the steel rod makes sense now. Alrighty, so I know we kind of covered it before, but for everybody who's starting out in your mediums, what's one mistake that you wish you didn't make? What's one mistake you don't want them making?
As Dawn said before, don't leave your clay stuff in the oven too long or it will become nice and crispy.
Alright, and I have so much dead resin in my workshop. I'm sure you have something that I should have heard.
Don't put too much catalyst in your resin, otherwise it will catch fire. And also make sure you get the ratios very accurate. Have two separate cups, one for your catalyst, one for your resin. Label them very well, otherwise you can get bad mistakes that way as well. And last, if you have to make any filler, buy the cheaper stuff online. It'll save you a lot more money than buying it at over-the-counter shops that have the more intricate stuff if you're making large objects.
By the way, if anybody's taking notes, I'd like a copy of these afterwards.
Don't burn them in the oven. That's the one mistake that you never want to happen. Finish your sculpture. Try and finish it within a day or two, because if you leave it out too long, it will dry out a bit and crack and be very hard to work with after. I've tried leaving things overnight and stuff and haven't been able to do anything else with them because they crack or fall apart otherwise. So yeah.
And any costume mistakes? Again, any notes, please? I do need these.
Lovely.
There it goes. And we'll just move along as if that did.
With adhesive, mentioned it before, demonic stuff. Last thing you want to do is put something together and find the adhesive right, then you have to try and fix it later on, which is something you're currently having to do with my armour pieces. Once dodgy it up and tape and hope it works for now, but after we'll see what works and what won't.
Good stuff. Now, we are obviously an island nation out in what is essentially Woodward. It can be quite difficult to find the supplies we want. Now, some of us are cheating because we're over where all the good stuff is. But for everyone who's making in Australia, getting supplies can be difficult. What's your advice to them?
Order online.
Try and become best buddies with major supplier units, and if you can, there's a few places like find, for example, jeweler suppliers. They can have some pretty exotic things you'll never know of that you'll actually find very useful for your projects.
Okay, so I buy Primo Sculpey and Sculpey 3 recently. Riot, the stores near me haven't gotten any new Primo Sculpey in months. So I have to go to Lincraft to buy it. There's also, I have to go to Spotlight to buy it. Lincraft has a brand called Fimo, and from what I've seen, they're usually pretty regularly stocked, but I haven't used that one yet. You can get your El Cheapo clays. I wouldn't suggest using them for selling things. I'd just use them as practice to learn how to make things. And yeah, if you cannot find what you need anywhere, just look online. Or if you happen to go on a holiday to America, Michael's is an amazing store. And I came back with way more stuff than I should have when I went over to America last week. So yeah.
So always get extra luggage in case you're traveling to somewhere with better supplies.
Yes.
Right on. So can I put in an order for you for the next time you come back to Australia?
Sure, why not?
And supplies for costuming, I know that they are generally online What's your advice on that one?
For supplies, there's a store in Melbourne called Lumen's Workshop. They sell all your basic cosplay supplies, foams, thermoplastics, Flex Bond primer / glue, works fairly well, and just anything else you might need for that. If you're working with steel in that, go to Bunnings and get sheets of steel for a reasonable price. And if you're working with electronics, LED and such, I usually just go to J-Car, still at a reasonable price and stuff there.
So you've actually found a way to go fairly easy nearby you?
Yeah, Lumen's Workshop, nowhere near me, but I just do online shopping for that.
Alright, so it's still sort of buying online, but it's close, so you don't have to wait 4 weeks before you can finish the project.
Yeah, pretty well.
Good stuff. Now, before we continue on, is there anyone in the audience who has any questions for any of our panelists? No? Cool. We'll keep it general then. And if you'll excuse me, my screen does not stay on like I told it to. Now, obviously some of you are selling in the vendor hall. Your artwork that you're doing, or your creations, is this something you want to turn into a career, or is this something that you like being a hobby, you like it being at your own discretion?
I mean, honestly, if it can be a career, that would be great, but if it's a hobby, it's a hobby. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, about the same. I like to, well, I still like to have a day job to earn a good income and then just experiment with stuff, see what sells. If it sells well, then maybe mention to a business.
Alright. Well, this was just sort of your testing ground to see what the people want, and that's what gets produced. Well, that's, if you're looking to move into creation, that's a pretty good business point right there. John?
My dream is to have making art be my job. At the moment I have to work at other places because I don't get commissions and stuff enough to support it. But if I could support it on commissions and doing conventions, I would do it in a heartbeat. It is my dream.
Personally, I'd like to just keep it as a hobby. Just something to do if you get bored of playing games and whatnot.
Fair enough. Yeah, for myself, I'm probably about the borderline. So many things I just want to stay a hobby, but I suppose the dream would be making a living out of what you love doing at your time. And so for those of you who are selling your work, how do you actually work out the price? Because that's a hurdle I know I'd struggle with. How do you calculate what your work will be priced at?
I work out how much the materials cost in total, and then I also work out based on time, and then I will kind of do it like an hourly wage kind of thing, where I add it up and then go, well, this took 2 hours to make, and I want to get paid like $15 an hour, maybe it's 30, something like that. 35 because the materials cost 5 or something along those lines, usually.
Depending on how much experimentation and hazardous materials are involved as well. So something like these sectors have some very interesting components that take a lot of sanding and stuff. Like breathing in fiberglass dust isn't exactly fun, so you need to wear like a respirator for any of that work, and it can take weeks to make the sectors right. Whereas when it comes to things like gold and silver, you have to work out the market value of it versus how much grams of the material you have, and then charge the price of that plus the time you spend making it.
Yeah, I suppose for gold and silver, like those special commodities, it can be quite difficult to be entirely different from the actual order.
Yeah, they change price daily. Sometimes cheaper, sometimes more expensive.
So at the moment, do you think everybody should buy out your entire table of stock at Rundlemere this weekend?
Definitely.
Shameless plug.
So yeah, like most artists, I use the materials versus time it takes method. I probably still underprice all my items, but I part of the joy of selling them is seeing how happy people are when they buy it. So I don't really mind that much. But yeah, you have to figure out what your time that is valued at, and then you can add on how much it costs to get the supplies and stuff. And yeah, that's generally how you work out your price.
And so from my understanding, Sombra, this is for your own projects. Is that right at this stage?
What's this?
All of your work so far has been for yourself?
Yes, everything's been for myself so far. I'm planning on doing a couple of Celestia crowns, Celestia and Luna ones. If I wanted to price them, I might do material cost, consumables cost, maybe a little on top of that just to claw back a little profit.
Perfect. And I think the best way to really see how you've priced your items would be to go up to Rundlemare, buy them all, and when you go home, just equivalent how much fun you had to how much money you spent, and then be sure to send only positive comments to them through Twitter or Facebook or however they choose. And so we're obviously all here for ponies. Looks like 75% of people are wearing some sort of pony apparel. But there are obviously other fandoms, other users. Are there any other fandoms that you're currently creating work for?
I'm beginning on stuff for RuPaul's Drag Race. And also a lot of bird stuff because I like birds.
I just like to dabble in things here and there. Like for example, I've always sort of liked Shrek necklaces and a few other things. They're also often called the Shrekless for short. And I saw a market for the cheaper versions because there was a like look it up, it is amazing. There is an 18-karat diamond encrusted one that's around, but it costs like $9,000 plus. So I wanted to make a more affordable silver one for people who actually don't have like millions of dollars to throw around.
That's another business tip for you. See what's on the market, see what people are wanting to get, and then undercut the competition.
Currently, I mostly just do work in My Little Pony things, and then also just some fantasy dragons, and I've got a really nice phoenix peacock on my table and stuff. And yeah, I will get into other fandoms when I find time to, when I learn how to do things.
I have seen some of Dawn's dragons, and they can get ridiculously amazing. And Sombra, is it mostly ponies?
Just ponies at the moment.
Is there something that you'd be looking to expand into?
Maybe the Borderlands universe.
Alright, be interesting. And so, you've obviously done plenty of research. You were cheating and just jumped straight in, but
Natural talent.
some of us aren't naturally talented, so we have to call it names. So, through your research, is there any sort of stellar advice, stellar tips that you've heard and you think everybody should know this if they wanted to start making ponies?
Yeah, there's one I've learned that's really quite nifty with casting with resin. So if you get a disposable cup and say like a spoon or something to stir it, what you should do is coat the outside of the cup in the catalyst, and that actually creates more surface area, which allows a more coherent mixture that will not sort of hardening correctly throughout your mold. If you can, use a vacuum chamber to evacuate all the bubbles out of the mixed resin, and that forms a better finished product. The other thing you can also do is use a pressure pot if you're forming something transparent like these crystals afterwards. But you may not have easy access to those because they can be a little expensive and difficult to get. Otherwise, you can also just borrow someone else's. Do that with 3D printers, don't buy them.
And for those of you playing at home, that advice with the catalyst on the side of the jar, that would also work really well if you're doing two-part paints as well. So if you're doing top coats, that surface area sounds pretty good. Any other advice that that you'd like to shamelessly spiel as being your own?
When mixing colours for sculpting clay, don't be afraid to mix too much. Always use a colour again, but it's very hard to mix the exact same colour up again if you make too little. It's very rare for you to find the exact colour you need straight from the packet. You usually have to mix like sometimes a dozen different colours together, especially if you want to add the glitter sculpey or add some sparkles of other sorts of shimmer. So yeah, just don't be afraid to mix the colour up and as much as you need to get the right colour.
And that probably works again for paint, because if you paint something, you run out of paint and you can't make that colour again, you are repainting the whole model.
Yes, I did paintings for a while, and that is exactly the advice I needed to hear when I was starting out.
And please don't use that advice for resins. Do not pre-mix your resins and leave it aside to use later. And Sombra, any advice that you'd like to pass on?
Make mock-ups for whatever model and stuff you might want to make. You want to make a crown or something, trace down a bit of cardboard or a bit of paper. Just measure it around your head or something. Just work it around yourself, and yeah, just keep measuring it until you find it's right. Last thing you want to do is just trace something, cut it out, find out you don't like it, then you have to do it all again.
Yeah, if there's one thing I remember from my costuming days, it's don't be embarrassed to stand in front of the mirror, just doing this, and maybe covering your head and covering that in clay, or constantly twisting yourself to make sure things fit. But those aren't the photos that go on social media. Alrighty, so we'll give you guys the time to shamelessly plug your wares. Now, we've all got your names. Can we find your work online, or is it all at the vendor hall this weekend?
We have an Etsy store, but we don't have everything on the Etsy store. If you want any commissions, just send us a message. We have Facebook, and I will answer very quickly.
Yeah, and we're planning on maybe putting things like the scepters up online as well, if we can get them, when I get them 100% perfect, we'll do that. And they also come, the scepters come in parts too, so if a piece breaks off it, you can just buy the separate pieces for a fraction of the price of the whole thing, making it a bit cheaper. And you can also have different crystals with different colours and different heads with different things.
Right, yes, that's a very Hasbro approach to things. You know, you can buy the scepter, but then you can buy the scepter with the green gem, buy a scepter with the orange gem, and make sure you collect all of the scepters.
And it just works.
Again, more business tips.
So I've got a lot of things on my table that I don't have commission prices for yet, like my sculptures and wood burnings and things that my sister helps me with wood burnings. But I'm going to work on getting that all up after AliCon when we get back home. Sculptures and things, yeah, definitely I will do commissions for them. And upstairs we've got all sorts of sculptures and things for sale. In the auction, there's a Princess Big Mac sculpture that I made. They had the pictures up before of me making it. And yeah, that's, just go up and have a look at it because I'm very proud of that piece.
And if you really want to see some impressive works as well, make sure you make it to the auction tomorrow afternoon. You can already have a look at most of the items will be on display in Rundle Mare of what's going up. And if you have anything that you yourself would like to put on the auction, you'll register that until tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, definitely come to the auction tomorrow, see some of the more exquisite one-off items that have been prepared by creatives upstairs. And even bid. I'd like to say bid, even though many of us can't. Some of us can't quite afford the auctions, but it's still great to see the things that come out. And if Terrific. So Sombra, I know you're still working personally. Is the commission for costuming something that may be down the pipeline?
Not particularly.
No, fair enough. That'd be verging on that, making it a business. We know that's not the way. Alright, terrific. Well, thank you very much everyone for joining us. I'll let you go now because there is still 15 minutes to get in the back of the line of Nicole's autographs, as it seems like most people are. But thank you everyone for coming and joining us today. I know it's certainly been a pleasure. I hope you guys have had fun up here, and I hope you guys have had fun down there. So thank you very much.